A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people. Because they have no sources.
The American press is widely considered an essential part of our country's democratic system. It keeps citizens informed on what their leaders are doing and how their decisions might impact them. That in turn informs the decisions citizens are making in the voting booth. But news readership is declining. More and more consumers are turning to social media to learn about the day's events, which can mean readers are relying on poorly sourced, unedited, or even falsely reported information.
You may be dazzled by your preteen and teens electronic fluency, but here's something far from dazzling. A new Stanford University study shows some 82% of middle schoolers could not distinguish between a native ad labeled sponsored content and a real news story on a news website's homepage.
The era of fake news comes as public mistrust of more traditional media sources is growing. To add to the confusion, President Donald Trump has declared credible news sources such as the New York Times and CNN both fake news and an enemy to the people.
Since you're attacking us, can you give us a question? No, Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Mr. President-elect, since you are attacking
No,
our news
not you.
organization,
Not
can
you.
you give us a chance?
Your organization
You
is
are attacking
terrible.
our news organization.
Your organization
Can you give us a
is
chance
terrible.
to
Let's
ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can
Quiet.
you state,
Quiet.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
can you state
She's asking
categorically,
a question. Don't
Mr.
be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you
No, I'm
give
not
us a
going to give
question?
you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
Go ahead.
can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect, that's not
Go ahead.
appropriate.
Leading news organizations and media literacy groups are working to counter this confusion by advocating for news literacy education. Groups such as the News Media Alliance, the New York Times, Public Media, and more have created online ICTs, or information communication technology, aimed at helping educators teach their students to think critically about the news they consume, teaching them to differentiate fact-based reporting from other types of writing, such as opinion, satire, and false reports, and helping them to understand the impact of bias on both the writer and the reader. One example is an ICT developed to be used much like the dating app Tinder, with participants swiping left or right to differentiate between fake and credible news stories. Other ICTs are online or web-based lesson plans that often tie what students learn to national education standards. Checkology invites students to learn in an online classroom where journalists present recorded video lessons about news credibility, and students are even given a chance to jump into the shoes of a journalist.
Check out the following examples of viral content and see whether you can separate fact from fiction.
Checkology says its program has been used by 6,300 public and private school teachers in all 50 U.S. states and 52 countries, a number that on first blush sounds quite impressive. But to put that number into perspective, consider that, according to National Center for Education Statistics, in the 2013-2014 school year, there were more than 98,000 public schools and more than 33,000 private schools in the United States alone. One might begin to wonder, why aren't these programs getting used more often? And when they are used, are they even working? Research indicates a number of barriers to implementing news literacy education programs, from the limits imposed by state and national education standards to limited resources, cultural pressure and tradition, and uncertainty about the effectiveness of the programs. I propose research in Leon County, Florida, where news literacy education is not currently a requirement for graduation. This research will focus on interviews with educators from kindergarten through high school to understand how they currently use the available news literacy education tools. Or if they don't, why not? Educators would be asked to implement a news literacy education program in the classroom and would be asked to administer pre- and post-tests to help study the effectiveness of the lessons. Finally, long-term, researchers would follow a group of students through high school to study how their news literacy knowledge develops over time and how it impacts their use and interaction with news. Researchers would follow up with these subjects several years after high school graduation in an effort to understand the long-term impacts of news literacy education. While a long-term study of this scope requires resources and time, I feel it is a necessity to encourage educators to teach news literacy and to ensure those lessons are effective in giving students the tools they need to grow into well-informed, civically engaged members of the American democracy.